Enoch walked faithfully with God, and then he was no more because God took him. Genesis chapter 5, verses 21 through 24. What kind of life would a person leave that the Bible will say you have walked so closely with God and God wouldn't allow death to touch you, instead, take you directly into his presence? Could Enoch's story be more, or it is just some kind of myth? Join us as we explore some lesser-known facts about Enoch, the man who was taken directly by God. Now let's delve in. Throughout the Bible, there are few instances of people being taken directly by God. Elijah and Jesus come to mind. However, while Jesus did experience death, Enoch and Elijah are the only two figures without question who were taken by God without tasting death. Enoch was the most righteous man of his time. He lived during a period in biblical history marked by growing wickedness and corruption among humanity. This was a time when moral and spiritual decay was rampant, leading to God's decision to bring about the Great Flood as a form of judgment. Enoch's life stands in sharp contrast to the prevailing sinfulness of his era, making his close relationship with God all the more extraordinary. Here are some 10 surprising facts about Enoch that you will never learn it anywhere apart from this channel. Make sure to finish watching the whole video, because at the end we have a gift for you after the second fact. Also, please take 2 seconds to subscribe and hit on the notification bell to get an update whenever we post a new video like this one. Let's get going. Fact number 10. Enoch was the 7th generation of Adam. Enoch lived in an era that followed the creation of the world and the expulsion of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. According to the genealogies recorded in Genesis 5, Enoch lived in the generations leading up to Noah, whose life was marked by a world so filled with violence and wickedness that God regretted creating humanity. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 through 6. The time in which Enoch lived was increasingly dominated by sin. Genesis 6, verse 5 gives us a glimpse into the moral state of the world. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. This description highlights the extent to which humanity had fallen into depravity. The hearts and minds of people were consistently bent toward evil, and the world was filled with corruption and violence. It was during this dark period that Enoch walked with God. Genesis 5, verse 24. A phrase that suggests a life of exceptional righteousness and devotion amidst widespread moral decay. Despite the pervasive wickedness of his time, Enoch maintained a life of purity and faithfulness to God. The Bible's brief but powerful description of Enoch's life emphasizes that he walked with God for 300 years after the birth of his son Methuselah. This suggests that Enoch lived in continuous fellowship with God, maintaining a level of righteousness that was extraordinary for his era. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text not included in the biblical canon, but influential in early Jewish and Christian thought, expands on this idea by depicting Enoch as a prophet who received divine revelations and who was deeply troubled by the sins of humanity. In this text, Enoch is shown to be a man who stood against the corruption of his time, warning others of the coming judgment. Given the rampant sin and impending judgment, Enoch's translation to heaven can be seen as a divine reward for his exceptional purity and faithfulness. Unlike the rest of humanity, who would soon face the devastation of the flood, Enoch was spared from death and taken directly into God's presence. This act highlights not only Enoch's righteousness, but also God's desire to preserve those who are faithful to him, even in the midst of a corrupt world. Fact number 9. Enoch was the first to talk about the second coming of Christ and his judgment. The idea that Enoch prophesied about the coming of the Messiah, which we believe is Jesus, comes from a passage in the New Testament, specifically in the book of Jude. Enoch, as a prophet, had the remarkable ability to foresee events far into the future. Many of the prophecies he spoke of have already come to pass, while others, including the highly anticipated second coming of Christ, are yet to be fulfilled. Enoch's prophetic visions, recorded in ancient texts, continue to resonate through history, offering insights into both past events and the future unfolding of God's divine plan. Jude chapter 1, verses 14 to 15, references a prophecy attributed to Enoch. Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied about them. See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone, and to convict all of them of all the ungodly acts they have committed in their ungodliness. and of all the defiant words ungodly sinners have spoken against him. This passage indicates that Enoch foresaw a future event where the Lord Jesus Christ would return in his full glory with countless holy ones, angels or saints, to execute judgment upon the ungodly. For Christians, this prophecy is seen as a foreshadowing of the second coming of Christ, where Jesus, as the Messiah, would return in glory to judge the living and the dead. What's incredible about Enoch's role as a prophet is that his words transcend time. Even though he lived thousands of years ago, his prophecies continue to speak to us today, offering both a warning and a promise. Enoch's prophetic insights serve as a bridge between the Old and New Testaments, connecting the dots between ancient expectations of the Messiah and our understanding of Jesus as the fulfillment of those hopes. Fact number 8. The Book of Enoch, as we know now, was not written by Enoch himself. It's something we call a pseudepigrapha. The term pseudepigrapha refers to a book attributed to a person who was not the actual author of the work. Pseudepigrapha were common around 400 BC to 200 AD. Authors attributed their works to famous characters from the Bible or from history to give them more weight and credibility. Other examples of pseudepigrapha from the approximate same time are the Testament of Job, which is also an ancient Jewish text that is part of the pseudepigrapha, attributed to Job, the biblical figure known for his patience and suffering. And then we have the Apocalypse of Baruch, which also provides insight into the Jewish experience and thought during the period following the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, reflecting the trauma and challenges faced by the Jewish community in the aftermath of this event, and Book of Ezra, which talks about a scribe and priest in the Hebrew Bible, among many others. Fact number 7. Enoch lived up to 365 years. Enoch's lifespan of 365 years stands out in the Genesis genealogical record, whereas his son Methuselah lived for over 900 years. Enoch was at age 300 when he gave birth to Methuselah, but it seems his years were short, given that longevity in the pre-flood era was typically associated with God's favor and blessing of longer years. However, Enoch's 365 years carry a symbolic weight that transcends mere numerical comparison. The number 365 immediately draws a parallel to the number of days in a solar year, which suggests a complete cycle or a full measure of time. In this way, Enoch's life can be seen as having reached fullness or completeness, not in quantity, but in quality. His life, though shorter, was complete in its purpose, marked by an unyielding faith and a close walk with God. The Bible often emphasizes that a righteous life is not measured by its length, but by its depth of relationship with God. Enoch exemplifies this principle. His 365 years were lived in such close communion with God that he became one of the few individuals mentioned in the Bible who did not experience death in the usual sense. While many of Enoch's contemporaries lived for centuries longer, their extended lifespans did not necessarily correlate with righteousness. For instance, the increasing wickedness that led to the flood during Noah's time suggests that longevity alone did not lead humanity toward God. Enoch's life, by contrast, was marked by a distinct righteousness that set him apart from the growing corruption of his age. Enoch's 365 years can also be viewed as a testament to the idea that a life lived in accordance with God's will, no matter its length, is eternally significant. His translation into heaven without experiencing death serves as a divine validation of the quality of his life. It suggests that the ultimate measure of a life is not how long it lasts, but how fully it fulfills God's purpose. Fact number 6. Enoch was a man of faith. Enoch is best known for his deep faith in God. The Bible specifically mentions that he walked with God, Genesis 5:24. This phrase indicates an intimate and consistent relationship with God, showcasing his life of dedication and obedience. In ancient Hebrew culture, walking with someone was a metaphor for a close and personal relationship. It suggests companionship, agreement, and shared purpose. For Enoch, walking with God meant that his thoughts, actions, and decisions were all in harmony with divine guidance. This level of intimacy is rare and marks Enoch as someone who had an exceptional relationship with the Creator, setting him apart in the biblical narrative. The phrase also highlights the consistency of Enoch's faith. Unlike other figures who might have had moments of faith interspersed with doubt or disobedience, Enoch's walk with God was steady and unwavering. This consistency is crucial because it suggests a life that is not merely marked by isolated acts of righteousness, but by a sustained, lifelong commitment to following God. Enoch's walk with God also signifies his dedication and obedience. In the biblical worldview, to walk with God is to live a life that adheres to God's commands and desires. Enoch's life was a continuous response to God's will, demonstrating that true faith is not passive but active and obedient. His obedience was not out of fear or obligation, but out of love and reverence for God. Enoch's walk with God serves as an ideal model for believers. It exemplifies what it means to live a life fully integrated with one's faith, where every aspect of daily living reflects a deep connection with the divine. This example has inspired countless generations to pursue a similar walk, striving for that level of closeness with God that Enoch achieved. The Bible's emphasis on Enoch walking with God also highlights the divine favor he received as a result. Enoch's translation into heaven without experiencing death is seen as a direct consequence of his righteous and faithful life. This extraordinary event underlines the belief that those who walk closely with God are ultimately rewarded, not necessarily with earthly blessings, but with eternal fellowship with God. Theologically, Enoch's walk with God points to the possibility of a life lived in perfect communion with the Creator, even in a world filled with sin and corruption. It suggests that such a relationship is attainable and that God's desire is for all of humanity to walk with Him in the same way. Enoch becomes a prototype of the ideal believer, whose life is so in sync with God's will that it transcends the ordinary bounds of human existence. Fact number 5. Enoch was a prophet of judgment. The Epistle of Jude, verses 14 to 15, attributes a prophecy to Enoch, where he foretells the coming judgment upon the ungodly. This passage reveals that Enoch was not just a man of faith, but also a prophet who spoke of God's justice. The passage in Jude quotes Enoch as saying, "Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones, to execute judgment on all, and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him." This prophecy is notable for several reasons. First, it is one of the few direct references to Enoch's words in the New Testament, giving him a voice that transcends the ages. Second, it highlights Enoch's role as a prophet who foresaw the ultimate justice of God, a theme that runs throughout the Bible. Enoch's prophecy in Jude positions him not only as a man of faith, but also as a prophet who was given insight into God's future actions. Prophets in the Bible were often chosen by God to deliver messages of warning, correction, and hope to the people. Enoch's prophecy focuses on judgment, stressing the seriousness of sin and the certainty of divine retribution. This reveals Enoch as a figure who not only walked closely with God, but also understood and communicated God's standards of righteousness and justice. Fact number 4. Enoch was the ancestor of Noah. Enoch's position as the great-grandfather of Noah places him within a lineage of righteousness that holds significant theological weight in the Bible. This connection between Enoch and Noah is more than just a genealogical link. It underscores the continuity of faith and divine favor across generations, leading to one of the most pivotal events in biblical history, the Great Flood. Enoch belongs to the genealogical line that traces humanity from Adam through Seth, a line often associated with those who call upon the name of the Lord, Genesis 4:26. This lineage is distinct from that of Cain, whose descendants are more often linked with increasing corruption and violence. Enoch's place within this line highlights the importance of spiritual inheritance, the passing down of faith, values, and a relationship with God from one generation to the next. Both Enoch and Noah are described as men who walked with God, Genesis 5:24, 6:9, indicating a deep and consistent relationship with the Creator. This shared description suggests that Noah's righteousness, which led to his selection as the one to build the ark and survive the flood, was not an isolated occurrence, but part of a broader family tradition of faithfulness. Enoch's own walk with God, marked by his translation into heaven without experiencing death, serves as a precursor to Noah's righteous life and his crucial role in God's plan to preserve humanity and creation. The connection between Enoch and Noah underscores the idea that divine favor can extend across generations. God's selection of Noah to survive the flood can be seen as a continuation of the favor shown to Enoch. This continuity suggests that the faith and righteousness of one generation can have lasting effects, influencing not only their immediate descendants, but also the course of human history. Enoch's legacy is thus preserved and amplified in Noah, whose obedience and faithfulness lead to the renewal of the earth after the flood. Enoch's relationship to Noah also carries deep theological implications. It reinforces the biblical theme that God is not only concerned with individual righteousness, but also with the preservation of a faithful remnant. Through Enoch's line, God ensures that amidst growing wickedness on the earth, there remains a lineage that remains true to him. This remnant, embodied in Noah, becomes the means through which God will both judge and renew the world. While the Bible does not provide explicit details about Enoch's influence on Noah, the close generational link suggests that the values and faith Enoch embodied were likely imparted to his descendants. This influence would have been crucial in a world that was increasingly turning away from God. Noah's own faithfulness, which mirrors that of Enoch, may well have been shaped by the example set by his great-grandfather. In this way, Enoch's life and example become a silent yet powerful influence on the man who would play a central role in God's redemptive plan. The connection between Enoch and Noah also serves to frame the flood narrative within a prophetic context. Enoch's role as a prophet, as mentioned in Jude, and his place in the line of Noah suggests that the flood was not just a response to human wickedness, but also a fulfillment of the divine warnings and prophecies that Enoch and others in his line may have received. Noah's role in building the ark and surviving the flood can be seen as both an act of obedience and a continuation of the prophetic legacy that began with Enoch. Enoch's position as the great-grandfather of Noah emphasizes the importance of a righteous lineage and the continuity of divine favor across generations. Enoch's walk with God and his prophetic voice laid the groundwork for the faith and obedience that would characterize Noah, leading to the preservation of humanity and the renewal of the earth after the flood. This connection between Enoch and Noah serves as a powerful reminder of the lasting impact that a life of faith can have, not just on one's immediate descendants, but on the entire course of history. Fact number 3, Enoch did not die, just translation. One of the most remarkable aspects of Enoch's life is that he did not experience death as we know it. Instead, God took him away, suggesting that he was translated directly into heaven without dying. This unique event is recorded in Genesis 5:24 and later referenced in Hebrews 11:5. Genesis 5:24 simply states, Enoch walked with God, then he was no more, because God took him away. This concise yet powerful statement leaves much to the imagination, sparking centuries of theological reflection. The phrase "God took him away" implies a divine act that removed Enoch from the earthly realm, suggesting that his close walk with God culminated in an extraordinary departure from the world. The absence of a traditional death narrative for Enoch underscores the special nature of his relationship with God. The New Testament book of Hebrews offers further insight into Enoch's translation, emphasizing the role of his faith. Hebrews 11:5 says, "By faith Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found because God had taken him. Now before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God." This passage not only reaffirms the Old Testament account, but also highlights that Enoch's translation was a direct result of his faith and the pleasure God took in his life. It suggests that Enoch's life was so aligned with divine will that he bypassed the natural order of death. Enoch's translation carries deep theological significance. It serves as a powerful symbol of the ultimate destiny of the righteous, eternal life with God. In Christian theology, Enoch's translation is often seen as a foreshadowing of the resurrection and the ascension of believers, who, like Enoch, are promised victory over death through faith in God. Enoch's experience prefigures the hope of eternal life that is central to Christian belief, offering a glimpse of the divine reward awaiting those who walk faithfully with God. Enoch's translation is one of only 2 instances in the Bible where a person is taken to heaven without experiencing death. The other is the prophet Elijah, who was taken up in a whirlwind, 2 Kings 2:11. These 2 events are exceptional and mark these figures as having a unique status in God's redemptive history. The rarity of this event underscores its importance and the special favor that Enoch received. The translation of Enoch also holds symbolic meaning. It represents the idea of divine approval and the possibility of transcending the limitations of earthly existence. Enoch's life and translation suggests that those who live in close communion with God can experience a form of spiritual transcendence even while still on earth. His translation is a powerful reminder that there is more to life than the physical world, and that the ultimate reward for a life of faithfulness is eternal fellowship with God. Enoch's translation has fascinated Jewish and Christian scholars for centuries. In Jewish tradition, Enoch is sometimes seen as a mystical figure who entered into the divine realm and gained special knowledge, which is reflected in the various apocryphal writings attributed to him, such as the Book of Enoch. Fact number 2, Enoch did have a wife. Not only that, he had sons and daughters too. The mention of Enoch's family in the Bible, though brief, adds a more personal dimension to his story. While much of the focus on Enoch tends to be on his extraordinary walk with God and his unique translation into heaven, the fact that he had a wife, sons, and daughters reminds us that he was also a family man, living a life grounded in the everyday realities of human existence. In Genesis 5:21-24, the Bible records the basic details of Enoch's family life. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. This passage reveals several key aspects of Enoch's life. First, it tells us that he became a father at the age of 65, which in the context of the long lifespans recorded in Genesis, suggests he entered fatherhood relatively early. The mention of Methuselah, who would become the longest-lived person in the Bible, highlights Enoch's role in the continuation of the human lineage and the specific line that would lead to Noah. The Bible's brief mention of Enoch's other sons and daughters indicates that Enoch had a full family life, with multiple children. Although their names and specific stories are not recorded, their existence suggests that Enoch fulfilled the common roles and responsibilities of a father in his time. This is significant because it shows that Enoch's exceptional spiritual life was lived out within the context of a normal, everyday family environment. He was not a solitary mystic, detached from the world, but a man who balanced his profound relationship with God alongside the duties of raising a family. The fact that Enoch walked with God for 300 years after becoming a father is particularly noteworthy. It suggests that his spiritual life was not something separate from his family life, but rather something that infused it. His walk with God would have influenced how he raised his children, treated his wife, and lived out his daily responsibilities. Enoch's life exemplifies the possibility of living a deeply spiritual life while also fulfilling the roles of husband and father. While the Bible does not provide details about the impact Enoch's walk with God had on his family, it is reasonable to infer that his close relationship with God would have had a profound influence on his children. Methuselah, his most famous son, lived for 969 years, a lifespan that some see as a sign of God's patience with humanity before the flood. This could suggest that the righteousness and favor that marked Enoch's life had a lasting impact on his descendants, even in a world increasingly filled with wickedness. Enoch's legacy as a family man underscores the idea that a life of faithfulness to God does not require withdrawal from the world or neglect of family responsibilities. Instead, Enoch's life demonstrates that it is possible to integrate a deep spiritual walk with the everyday realities of marriage and parenthood. His ability to maintain a close relationship with God while also fulfilling his roles as husband and father makes him a relatable and inspiring figure for those who seek to live out their faith in the context of family life. The Bible's silence on the details of Enoch's wife and the specifics of his family life can be seen as an invitation to reflect on the universal aspects of his experience. By not naming his wife or detailing the lives of his other children, the focus remains on Enoch's walk with God, while also acknowledging that he lived a normal human life with all its associated relationships and responsibilities. This balance between the sacred and the ordinary is what makes Enoch's story both unique and universally applicable. All right, so before we move to fact number 1, during our research on this topic, we came across a fictional book about Enoch's wife. The book is quite interesting. So if you are a fiction lover, we will share a link to this book in the description and pin as a first comment so that you can go and check it out. Moving into light, Zahira, wife of Enoch, is a compelling work of historical fiction that imagines the life of Zahira, the wife of Enoch. The novel portrays Zahira as a deformed and outcast woman who faces mockery and violence, but finds inner strength and faith to rebuild her life. Concealing her identity as Enoch's wife, she seeks acceptance based on her own merits in the city of Zion. This inspiring story of resilience, faith, and hope offers a unique feminine perspective on ancient life and adds depth to the biblical narrative of Enoch. And now, fact number 1. Did you know that Enoch is associated with the number 7? Okay, let me go deeper. Enoch's position as the 7th from Adam holds symbolic significance, as 7 often represent completeness or perfection in the Bible, especially considering the recurring importance of the number 7 in biblical theology and symbolism. For instance, the creation. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th, making the 7th day holy and establishing a cycle of 7 that defines time itself. Genesis 2:2-3. Sabbath. The 7th day of the week is the Sabbath, a day of rest and spiritual renewal, representing the completion of creation and a reminder of divine order. Exodus 28:11. These examples demonstrate that 7 is not just a random number, but one imbued with theological significance, representing God's design and the completion of his work. Given this context, Enoch's position as the 7th from Adam is more than just a numerical fact. It is loaded with symbolic meaning. Enoch, as the 7th in line, can be seen as a figure of completeness or perfection within the genealogy of humanity. Thanks so much for watching, and comment down below on what you learned from these facts.